everyone, I'm Chelsea and welcome to In Conversation with YWLC, where we share insights on topics like career, mental health, wellness, and many more. Today, we'll be talking more about making a career transition that can be so fulfilling yet so daunting at the same time. How does one decide to take that leap of faith and risk it all behind? Or should I say a well-calculated risk-free step? We've invited Jacqueline, who has worked close to 30 years from banking to nonprofit and now advising startups. So welcome, Jacqueline. Maybe you could share with us a little bit more about your transition and what you're doing currently?
Thanks, Chelsea, and thank you to YWLC. Very privileged to be here. So transition is something that is quite a bit of a buzzword. So maybe I take myself back to the beginning. So I was this typical graduate in business admin who just decided that at that time, banking was something that was natural for all of us. My time in banking, 30 years, spans across different places. Consumer Bank, which was Citibank, all the way to ABN AMRO, and then after that UBS. Eventually, I was running Coutts Southeast Asia Private Bank, and also I went on to run a family office, which I set up for a Hong Kong China family office, a fund management company. In between that, I believe I forgot that I did set up the distribution network for Allianz Global Alliances when they first took over the PIMCO bond funds assets. So during this time was quite interesting because you get to do different things, and also in that sense a natural transition from consumer to business banking, which was SME banking. And at a very young age, at 29, I was already running business banking, which allowed me to actually start thinking about being more entrepreneurial and start developing different revenue opportunities in order to meet targets, which was obviously what finance was all about. So after all that said and done, I unfortunately or fortunately, I would call it a blessing in disguise, was down with cancer. I suffered from stage 1 breast cancer, which I've recovered in 2020. And that kind of definitely put a halt to my ambitions to further my career in finance, because I needed to take stock of what matters most was my health. And also I have a family. My kids, who are now grown up already, was important to me. So family came first, health also came first. And also the realities of understanding that you can't really run like before was a bit hard for me to stomach. But I took the rest and I positioned myself to transit, to look at something different. Inspiring Girls came about because I was serving in SCWO, Singapore Council of Women's Organisation, of which I was a board member and taking charge of overseeing Inspiring Girls. I found that the Inspiring Girls campaign that was introduced globally was very meaningful, because a lot of times we forget that we girls tend to overthink when we're very young. And we tend to plan our life and then realizing that at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, what happens? We're not very agile and flexible. If an older person, a female older role model, was to go back in time and tell herself, just stay curious and be open, maybe it would have changed a lot and helped them to be more confident. So the mission of Inspiring Girls is to inspire girls aged 9 to 18 years old to be more confident to pursue their interests by connecting them to female role models. And then during that time of volunteering, which I have 23 years of volunteer in another organization, Financial Women's Association of Singapore, I felt that was a very good counterbalance to the work I do in finance. It helped me broaden my network, keep myself really authentic and real, and understand that at the end of the day, nothing really lasts forever. It's what you give back and the social impact that you give back that actually matters the most. Today, I'm happy to say that I've pivoted to startup advisory. So I advise 2 startups, very proud to mention them, SG Veg Farms, which is the HDB rooftop urban farm, and Vertetic, which is on prosthesis pain management, where they use gamification to try and distract phantom pain for rehabilitation.
Wow, that's a really impressive career transition, all the way from finance to now startup advisory. What would you say was like your key or pivotal highlight that made you move towards startup advisory after Inspiring Girls? Was there like a correlation between both of them, or were they completely different projects and some milestone happened that made you decide to pivot again?
I had to take a long time to reflect because when you are in a very comfortable corporate career and doing well, you tend to forget what are your natural talents and your skills. After a lot of reflection, I realized that got me to be very successful was actually staying curious. I was always very open to learn and open to try something new. Development of new revenue business models, development of new businesses, meeting the clients, understanding their needs was something that you can transfer your skills over. And being an entrepreneur was something that I always felt very proud of because I could create business or products, even though I was a frontline head of private banking or frontliner, was able to actually work with a lot of different stakeholders in the bank to create the products for the client. So I took that skill over and went to school. Actually, I went to SMU to study a Master's of Entrepreneurship and Innovation to validate what I already know at a very late age, which was just last year. It gave me confidence to be able to do advisory work today, focusing on the same skills that I already had, which was business development, using my finance skills to actually look at their corporate structure and looking at new revenue business, because at the end of the day, all startup needs money, fundraising. So these were skills already I had. I just needed to repackage it and make good use of it.
Could you share more about this master's degree you took, and were there any blockers when deciding to take a master's? Although it has been so long since you went to university, I presume, or was it a very seamless transition for you and you didn't hesitate that much?
It was very daunting, to be honest. It was a time when I just lost my elderly family members to dementia. I've been a caregiver for 12 years to my in-laws and to my own elderly sister. And I had just quit my job actually to really do full-time care. But they decided to kick the bucket or give me that space much earlier. Like within 3 months, I lost all of them. So I was going through a bit of a burnout traveling, and I was reflecting, what do I do next? Government says reskill, retool. I'm not really in for that, I felt. But then again, there was a dream I always wanted to do, was to study, which I didn't have the time and the opportunity. So I said, okay, I went to SMU. I spoke to them and they advised me innovation because I didn't really need to do the rest of the master's degree, left with innovation, and only because they saw my CV and what work I did, and I was so passionate about talking what I created. I took the admission test. I really was very worried because I'm in my mid-50s, close to mid-50s last year. And I thought, not sure whether I'll clear anything. I made it in 1 year. I got into the dean's list. So pretty proud of myself for doing it. I think I was even more happy that I could connect with people that were in their 30s and work with them in projects and group work and capstones and all. So it was really a very good experience. I think I grew younger as a result of going in.
That's really great. I think you're inspiring all the moms out there that it's never too late to go back to education, and there's nothing too daunting of going back, even though it means you're going to be doing projects with people in the 30s. Out of curiosity, because you mentioned these projects are all with people much younger, were there any blockers you faced? Like maybe people were a bit hesitant of working with you, or they really fully embraced your presence?
I think they were very intimidated working with me. I didn't do the part-time. I went to the full-time. If I had gone to the part-time, it would be much easier for the audience or for my classmates. But I went to the full-time. I learned to dress down, really down, and keep it very simple to make it easier for people to accept me. I also learned to listen more, because when you have reached a age or stage in life where you think you have done it all and you've seen Asian financial crisis, subprime, and whatever, you think you know everything, but the reality is that the world today is very different from the world that I was in, let's say in 2008 where subprime happened. So I learned to listen. I learned to try and understand where they were coming from. And I think the part that was most daunting was the group discussion at midnight, because most of the young to stay up really late so the group meeting will start at 11 p.m. and finish 2 a.m. I think by 12:30 I fell off to sleep already. So that one was hard. That was hard. And the other one was my first exam. My very first exam paper was closed book, handwritten, and at night. I've never taken an exam at night in my life. And for my age, most of us at 9:30 were a bit of a sleepyhead or a bit of a twilight zone, or we zoned out. So it's really daunting on that one. But I managed to manage it along the way. But I must say that it was small little obstacles. It really is a mindset, right? If you think it's a mountain, it's a mountain. If you think it's just a little puddle of water, you just step over it. If you think it's impossible, then you stop and you don't do. But for me, whenever I look at obstacle, I like, how am I going to get around it? How am I going to clear it? How am I going to go about it? Who can help me? So I didn't do it alone. I had a lot of classmates. I really asked for help. I wasn't ashamed to ask for help. I was very humble. Like when I had to sign on to the system for the first time, the Oasis system, I think I drew blank. So how do I do this? How do I get my course? And everything is online. So I asked for help. So I think it's something that my age group needs to learn.
Asking for help.
Yeah.
I think like when people get older, they feel that they have much more knowledge when people are younger, right? And then they will tend to not ask for help so much. So I think it's back to the first point you said, it's always being curious, always asking. And what do you think were some benefits that really helped you in this course for being of your age group? For example, someone in their 40s and 50s, how would they benefit from going to this master's degree compared to someone who is maybe a millennial or my age? Do you think there were some insights you had that you learned in many decades of working that really helped to bring you to that dean's list, for example?
For me, I didn't study for a job, grades, or with no expectation. I went in purely for learning. I went in with a very clear direction that I'm here to study because I love to study. I never got a chance to study well, and I wanted to enjoy the moment. So if you have that mindset of just learning or not because you want to get a job, I think the motivations are very different. So I spent a lot of time doing a lot more research, a lot more reading because I was very curious. Actually, I'm grateful that I didn't do it earlier, because if I had done this in my 30s or 40s, I wouldn't be doing what I did. When they brought up a lot of the case studies, I would say that I am very fortunate to have been brave, probably crazy blind to do what I did. And I had probably a lot of lady luck to really create or to push through certain business or certain innovations in a very big MNC. And if I had that knowledge of what I have now, I don't think I'll do it, because sometimes too much knowledge hinders the passion because you overthink. You think of the risks, you think of the chances of failure. When I did what I did during my career in banking, I didn't think of the risks. I just felt from the gut and just did it. Of course, I didn't do it alone. I had a lot of these banks are very structured. You need to lobby for the support and approval. But I went against the grain and got the approval because I believed in it. And when I went to school and I looked at all the cases, I like, oh no, I actually did that. It's scary. Okay, I'll never do it again, because it was really daunting to actually see it on paper. Sometimes doing your studies early may actually hinder the spirit of entrepreneurship or the spirit of your passion. Sometimes it depends on individuals. for me, I think doing it now was good because I wrapped up whatever I did in the last 30 years in a nice package.
And I know you mentioned a little bit about overthinking, right? Would you say that when you navigated so many career transitions, were they all very calculated moves, or was it more of I'm feeling it in my gut, my heart is telling me to do, and then I just jump and then have that leap of faith? Or is it more of everything is very well calculated, think about the pros and cons before you make the next decision?
I'm not a risk taker, so I would have taken a very calculated move on every step I take. So when I started in Citi, I was in Consumer Bank. I was in Citi Gold, and I was very much, I would say, bored after 2 or 3 years doing what I was doing. I was very curious about the other type of client business, which was business banking in the consumer bank. So I looked at the job opportunity, I qualified and I did an internal transfer. And I started in business banking. I then learned a lot in business banking and was able to do extremely well to run the department at close to 29, 30 years old. And then I moved on to another internal transfer to do sales in the branches where we had the accredited investor regime, and the new investment products were then offered as a result of the revised platform. So that was basically sales channel distribution of investment products. After that, I just thought, okay, so I know all this different point of sales distribution. What's next was I wanted to learn the product. So it was very calculated. So I wanted to learn a product, which I couldn't because I'm in the sales division. So I moved on to Allianz Global Alliances because they had just bought the assets of PIMCO bond funds, and I was able to build the distribution network. And what I wanted was use my skills to build the sales distribution network with all the banks, and also learn how to learn all the different products that were being created or being managed, and learn how research house do structuring, research house. After that, I felt that I learned everything, and ABN AMRO came a calling. I used all my experience to develop Bengal Preferred Banking, which was on the cusp of them obtaining a wholesale license, bank license, and I created the Bengal Preferred Banking business model. Then what was the most uncalculated move was to UBS, because I didn't expect that coming. UBS came a calling directly to me with no headhunters, and I met the CEO. I wasn't very keen to join private bank because I wasn't interested. I always tell this story. No offense to all private bankers, because I'm a private banker at heart. I said private banking is Persian kittens walking on rarefied air. I'm just an alley cat in the consumer bank world, and I like to be free to run around, and I don't think I would fit. So he asked me why. So he said, what is my view of private banking and why? So I told him my view with the expectation of not joining. Actually, I actually told him very respectfully that I'm not interested. I'm only here because my friend referred me to you and insisted. Actually, it was my ex-staff in the bank, in UBS. And I said, I respectfully explain to you, and I don't know what I said, but I was talking about wealth management of today. And he just said, you're hired. You are a private banker. You just don't know that you are one. So I joined UBS as a team head directly, not a private banker. I was trained as a mid-career management desk head to manage private banking business, the private bankers, and I stayed there for a very long time. It was the best time of my life. I learned a lot, and I attribute all my training, the other half of my training, to UBS. So I had an opportunity to then move on to the final level, which was running a private bank. So Coutts Private Bank came a calling through the global head was an ex-UBS head. And I thought, yeah, that's probably the end of the whole chain of what we call distribution business. So I joined Coutts and ran the business until they were taken over. They were sold to UBP. And then the final one was actually setting up a fund management company for a family office, which is what normal private bankers would do when they finally leave the corporate world and set up their own little gig, which I did that as the CEO of a fund management company. So it was a bit of calculated, a bit of risk, but the doors were there. It was for me to open, but I wouldn't say I took crazy risks. It was all thought through. There's a clear line of moving along the sales distribution business, the different jobs to be done in that whole segment, that whole line of work.
And then even when you move to like Inspiring Girls, to co-chair Inspiring Girls, and also to your startup, you would say that they were all very well calculated moves as well. Because I think although a lot of people would think that people who do so many career transitions or wear so many hats are more of like risk takers. They are very happy to move from this to that instead of staying in their comfort zone. But I think you've proven that I think there's a fine balance between making a well-calculated move, yet exploring and stepping out of your comfort zone as well.
One, when you do transitions or when you think about transitions, it's always about focusing on your core competencies and never letting that go. Because what you're good in, you will always be good in, because it was forged in fire during your early years or when you were under pressure to perform or to be promoted. That will be always your core competency. It will probably vary or develop in a different way on specialized domains, but the core competency should never be just discarded. It's a lot of work to build it, so why waste it? You just need to know how to use the core competencies in a different domain. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand about transition.
What would you say were some of your core competencies that remain aligned from finance to social impact to startup that you brought along with you?
Very clearly, business development. I was very strong in that. I'm also a very strong risk manager, setting up companies or setting up businesses, compliance, because I have to be responsible. In my banking world, I'm responsible to MAS for all the governance, all the AML, anti-money laundering, all the suspicious transaction report, all the client KYC. So that requires me to be very strong in understanding the entire landscape of a client background and making sure that the money is not dirty. So that is very portable to setting up a business. Do your homework before you actually embark on a business. Know your competition, know your customer, understand what pricing will work for the segment that you're targeting when you build a business. The same for banking. When we are managing high net worth clients or ultra, they are very price sensitive. You got to know your competition. You got to know what the other bank is offering. How are you going to counter? What's the value proposition? What is the value of a trusted advisor? So that value proposition, again, is the core of any business that still runs, and that runs very well. The branding, how do you build a brand's value proposition? So they're all very portable. Inspiring Girls is all about the brand, but it's about the mission. It's about keeping it very real to the mission, never deviating, focus. Everything builds around supporting the mission. So it's very much the same. To me, it's really the same, because that's how I built my private banking teams, how I build all the businesses in banks.
Thanks for sharing these transitional skills. I think I would have never thought that there were some core competencies that could easily be replicated in Inspiring Girls, in startups, in finance. So thanks a lot for sharing with everybody here. Another question I had was actually, what was there any common purpose or a fulfillment that you found from finance to social impact to building startup? Because they're all very different, right? Was there something about each of them that made you feel it was very purposeful, although they were all so different?
All three are highly complex businesses. Finance is a very complex business if you really look at it. There's so many parts of finance and still evolving. Last time was fintech. right? Then is blockchain. Today, the new world order is digital assets, basically the operating platform, because current bank systems are not fit for purpose to manage the new digital assets, which means that there's a gap in AML. So it's so complex. Inspiring Girls is about how do you manifest or how do you execute the word confidence and empowerment to young girls? How do you teach volunteers, role models to talk to them about empowerment when they themselves don't feel very empowered? So we have developed these 3 Rs: role models, relate stories of resilience. That's all it requires them, because storytelling is just about the easiest and the oldest way of actually passing on the brand message, to pass on a key message. Telling a story, even in a pitch, in a fundraising, is always the best way to attract attention. That's how we have to learn how to create value. So that's very complex. Who are the stakeholders? And in the startup world, everyone don't know what they're doing. Everyone doesn't know whether their product will sell, but they believe that they have the best product. But along the way, they're fraught with so much complexities that they didn't think very much of. And then they got into a bit of a mess, or I would say caught in a net. And then you have to be there to try and pull that net without destroying the business. Like the fishes are stuck in the net and you're trying to break the net without cutting the net. So I feel that the curiosity and the appreciation for complexity is what I feel is a common thread for me.
I see. And since this is, after all, YWLC and a female organization, right? Do you have any story to share? Maybe not just from you, like a personal story, or maybe from girls that you worked at Inspiring Girls, of any stories that you know of how it was really difficult for them to overcome some form of societal expectations. It could be your story, or it could be someone else's story that you heard. Feel free to share anything.
So many. I'm very blessed. In the short 2 years, we've impacted about 2,000 over girls with close to 170 volunteers. One story sticks out to me was this lady. She wasn't sure. So every single role model I have to meet, and some of them really have never done something like this before, actually majority. So I always have to take time to listen to their story. And she told me her story is not interesting. I said, just tell me. And I said, what do you want to do when you were a kid? She said, I wanted to be a home economics teacher. And I said, oh, that's cool. And then so what happened? By the time she got to college or high school, she's American, home economics teachers don't exist. So I said, why do you want to be a home economics teacher? Because I love my grandmother's cooking and I wanted to be very close to food. So she was really stuck at high school, getting a diploma. She was raised in a very underprivileged environment in Austin, Texas. Of course, today is a different world, but there's a lot of poor places in US. And she wasn't sure what she's going to do. So she went to community college to study, because that's the way how things work there. That's all she could afford. And a chemistry lecturer told her that she's pretty good in chem, that she could consider looking at food sciences. And she's never heard that word before. And she said, oh, chemistry? I love food. That's food sciences. Okay, that could be something I could consider. And so she went on to study, and she got a university degree. She got a scholarship from a food science company, and she did do. And fast forward, I taught her how to say this to the young kids. I have a job that takes me around the world, that has taken me around the world 3 times. And I've basically have the best job in the world of making foods out of nothing, out of chemicals, like Coca-Cola and sweets and everything. So she's a global head of one of the very big food sciences company. And that was her story, because she was totally lost. She studied for a job that did not exist anymore. And that's many stories that represents many women that I've met. Another one was, she was a banker and very good in treasury. And along the way, I think it's burnout. She took a break, and then she wasn't sure. She was doing like part-time accounts because she's a CPA. I said, you're wasting your time, your talent. Fast forward, I say, try the new world, lor, the payments business in the fintech world. Today, she's one of the top 50 women in finance for the payments team. So there are a lot of stories where we will get lost, we will get stuck with something, or most of the time, the word lost is the wrong word. We're just stuck, but we're not looking. And then there was recently a young girl. Shout out to Ashfa. She's only, I think, 19 or 20. And she said this to everyone. They always say you just look for the doors to open, right? Opportunity will knock on your door, right? But when there are no doors, but you face the walls, you build your own door and walk through it and find the opportunities. So I was like, yeah, that's what we all have to do.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline, for sharing. I think I've learned so much about not just women who are really inspiring in their careers, but also on how you took calculated moves to go through so many career transitions in your life, from finance, private banking, all the way to advising startups right now. And I'm so happy that you shared all of this, and I hope that this was a really fulfilling podcast for you as well. Maybe you could share with the viewers here more about where they can find you on what social media platforms and where they could reach out to you to find out more.
Sure. You can find me on Inspiring Girls Singapore, or you're on my LinkedIn, Jacqueline Chua, and on my Instagram, Jacqueline Chua.
All right. To everyone watching, you can find us more on YouTube and Spotify. Do leave a comment, follow this channel, and turn on your notifications. And once again, thank you, Jacqueline, so much for coming on board today.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
And that was an episode of In Conversation with YWLC. Hi, everyone. We're from the Young Women's Leadership Connection, YWLC. We are a volunteer-run organization operating on a not-for-profit basis aimed at supporting and nurturing young women aged 21 to 35 in Singapore in their personal and professional lives through mentorship, leadership development, social impact, and networking. Find out more about our community at ywlc.org.sg.